And greetings and welcome to Refuge Depot. As you saw on the screen, we're going to be talking about soft targets, how to stay safe in places that are relatively unprotected. And so we know that this is a very sensitive subject, and so we're going to definitely address it in that way. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on my co-host, and I'll go ahead and start with Mr. Sanford Whitlow. We'll go ahead and bring you on in. Greetings, brother. How you doing today?
Outstanding. How you doing, brother Steve?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's good to see you, brother. And
Yes,
we'll
sir. You
bring
as well.
on Mr. Aaron Olinger. And greetings.
How you doing today, Steve?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Doing well. And I'm glad that we're going to be talking about this subject because really, I think some of the things that we've been talking about in the past just leads right on up to this topic as well. And so let's go ahead and get on into it. And would any of you like to start off by helping our audience to understand what is a soft target?
Sanford, I'll leave that up to you.
Okay. Well, initially, what a soft target is, I'm gonna put it in layman terms, make it as simple as possible. A soft target is some place or somewhere in an environment that is easily accessible with relatively no resistance and is relatively unprotected. And that's a simple way of putting it. A place that's easily accessible with relatively no resistance and relatively unprotected. So that's what we've been
Okay.
defined as a soft target. Some examples would be places like hospitals, schools, malls, even events. You know, you can have a parade, you can have be in the airports, movie theaters where we had things happen before. Anything that the public may be involved. Um, one of the things that we don't want to talk about is a soft target, and we'll get into later on, is where our children are housed. You know, be that daycare centers or schools. So those are soft targets.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. And so let's look at some of the let's see here as we talk about these soft targets, and that's a great introduction into it. So opening, let's look at some of the past soft targets that were attacked so that we can hopefully give people an understanding of what we're talking about. um, and I think I'll start off with, we've seen a lot of these protests where the people are gathered together, and we hear about not only just the protest, but just like a gathering on the street, like Bourbon Street or whatever, and then we hear of a vehicle running through these areas, and so that is one of those soft targets that we're talking about. It's relative. It's open. It's relatively unprotected. I know that down in Bourbon Street, they were trying to put those barriers up, but they said that the individual was able to bypass those, get around them, and still, cause some death and damage to those who were at the activities. So that's one of the examples that I wanted to give.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
if you are,
we can look at some of the things that happened, like movie theaters years ago when during the premiere of a Batman movie, a guy went in there and unfortunately attacked a whole lot of innocent people. Something that
yeah,
happened a couple years ago at a mall here in Indianapolis, where a guy went in the restroom, was in there for a substantial amount of time, came out and started opening fire on people. So, right, soft target, like I said, easily accessible, relatively unprotected. And that doesn't mean
mm,
there's not any security or police in the area, but it means that the public or the presence of the people truly outweigh the people who are provided to protect the environment.
right. And then, there are some soft targets that are a little bit more protected than others. But let's say, for instance, like you were saying, that movie theater. So that's a soft target. And even though the people are ticketed, that doesn't mean that they are, scanned for any type of weapons. That is a little bit different sometimes when you go to bigger stadiums where you have sports events. And now some of these sports events that they do have, um, what you have metal detectors that you have to walk through, and so you have some semblance of protection there, but still that is still an open area. Um, can you would you like to chime in on that, Mr. Aaron?
Well, there years ago, I used to do armed security work for about 10 years. And most of the events that I protected and the agency I worked for protected, um, we were only told that they were only allowed to, well, actually, they only wanted to pay for one guard for every 100 people that attended an event.
Mm,
And that, I never understood that ratio, who came up with that, how that come up with, because if anything goes down and say 100 people start fighting, one person isn't going to be able to stop it. So I never
mhm,
understood that ratio, but that
mhm,
ratio is, for law abiding citizens, that might be enough security. Just like if you go into a bank, you'll see a guard there and he might have pepper spray on him and that's it. Now, for
mhm.
uh, the average law abiding citizen, that's probably enough security to have. But for a determined person or group of people trying to enter a place, that would be not enough to deal with the threat that's would be there. But I'll stop there for
Mhm.
right now.
Well, I
All
want to
right.
piggyback
So
off of that real quick. What I wanted to
yeah.
say is this: we have to remember, and we're gonna get into this in more detail about our personal responsibility, because when you have
Mm,
events like that, when you see those security officers or police, that number is there just for liability purposes for the insurance
mm,
of the event or the insurance of the company. So I just want to throw that out there to people to not get in the mindset that you're going to be saved by that. Because like Aaron said, 1 to 100 is impossible. I do know I was checking out somebody this past week, and the Duke North Carolina game was a couple weeks ago, right before the NCAA March Madness tournament started. And that's like the biggest game of the year in the ACC that they finish on. And they had no metal detectors at any major entrances. The only time people
mm,
got checked if they were coming in with a bag that was being checked in. But other than that, there was no metal detectors to check anybody for anything. It was over 21,000 kids. I'm gonna say kids, 21,000 individuals there. So I'm
mm.
just saying that to let you know how we overlook it so much and we take so much for granted that things we want to enjoy, we don't really stay on top of.
Right, right, right. And so, like we were saying, some of these soft targets that we're looking at schools, shopping centers, transportation hubs, places of worship, and large outdoor events. And we know Dylan Roof, for instance, went into the church. So now we see a lot of churches are starting to begin to have more security. In the Nation of Islam, one of the things that they always looked at the minister. He always has some brothers around him securing him, and so the churches, at one point in time, they looked at that and somewhat mockingly. But nowadays they're beginning to understand, because even the houses of worship are not immune to these type of soft target attacks. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. These locations are often characterized by limited security measures and protective infrastructure, making them easy targets and for attack. And so that's, yeah, definitely something that we want to look at. Let's go ahead and look at, and I know we talked about that. But let's look at some of the focus on the evolution of attacks from simple weapons to more complex strategies, like the history of these attacks. So I know that, in America, who was the individual who set that bomb off in, I think it was Oklahoma? Was it the Murray
Tim,
Building or something like
it was Timothy
Timothy?
McVeigh.
Right, right. And so that was definitely an attack that was horrific. And I think that that's something that we can definitely look at there as far as a soft attack. So, did you all want to go into how we can protect ourselves? Some of the ways that if we venture out and go forth, what we should look out for.
Uh, I'd like to cover before we get to that level uh,
Hmm.
the reason why we're covering this today. If you don't mind me mentioning something real quick,
Sure, go
okay?
ahead.
About 10 days ago, the American Hospital Association and Health Information Sharing and Analysis Center, and this was on May 18th, 2025. They both issued a joint statement to the hospitals here in America about a potential coordinated multi-city terrorist attack on hospitals in the coming weeks. I mean, they literally warned the hospitals that there is going to be a coming attack. They've gotten information to believe that that was credible enough that they could run with. Now, the people who originally posted it was JSOC, which is Joint Special Operations Command, the CIA, and some combat veterans. They had posted it. Where they got the information, was it through interrogations? But it would have had to have been multiple sources so that one would confirm the other. Otherwise, they would have just thought it was just some BS. Now, the FBI, they also issued a similar warning. They said it was a credible threat against the hospitals, what they called a multi city terror plot. Now, ISIS K was looking to hit soft targets in the US, which consisted of hospitals, nuclear energy sites, old folks' homes, schools, etc. They felt that the contract security would be too under trained to handle an organized threat. And most contract security is unarmed. So going
Mhm.
up against a group of guys, they wouldn't be able to handle it. Now, the methods of attack that they were told would happen would be car or truck bombs, where they can blow the front of a hospital right off. Then there was going to be armed assaults, where groups of people would come inside with probably some sort of assault weapons, and they would just start shooting folks as they walk down the hallways. Then they talked about another method of attack would be to take over floors or entire buildings to hold hostages. And then there was also mentioned ransomware attacks to cripple the hospital's operating systems. But those were the four methods that came out of how this coordinated attack over the internet was going to occur. And it was going to be in multiple cities, all on the same day, all at the same time.
Mhm.
And the main goal of it was to create chaos inside the United States. Now,
Mhm.
there's a three-stage process to creating chaos to topple a nation within itself. And we've already experienced in the last 2 years the first stage. And the first stage is a stage called isolation. What you want to do is you want to cut transportation, communications, make the target deaf, dumb, and paralyzed as much as possible. That sets up stage two. Now, how do you do that in stage one? Now, keep in mind, in the last 2 years, what has occurred? Cyber attacks. There's been attacks on the phones, water systems, transportation, hospitals, pipelines, 911 systems. Now, the one thing that they didn't attack, and maybe they didn't want to reveal it, was bringing down the power grid. But all those other areas was attacked. And I'm going to tell you, it's in my opinion, those were dry runs. They wanted to test their ability to get into the systems. Your bad actors, your people who are perpetrating this is China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. We have 4 nations coming against us that's been breaking into our systems in the last 2 years. Now, most people aren't connecting the dots. But again, those were dry runs. Now, at any point in time that they want, when this attack occurs, they'll bring down your phones. Waters won't come to your house no more. Transportation will be cut because they will confuse the main offices. And we already saw where they directed that ship into that bridge to prove that they could break up transportation of shipping. Hospitals, they keep coming in and scrambling the operating systems, and they can also mess up the prescription systems. They shut down that pipeline on the east coast of the United States, which caused a gas shortage to occur, gasoline shortage. They've came in over the 911 systems and have scrambled them. Only thing they haven't done was bring down that power grid. And I feel that when that day comes, they will reveal how that's going to happen. But they got stage 1 already set up. Stage 2 is synchronized chaos. That's where you want to terrorize people mentally and also financially. Now, we've had covert attacks and misinformation happening. Again, the cyber attacks is covert. There's been a lot of misinformation as how this is happening. And through the BRIC Alliance, they've been attacking the US dollar. We've had a currency war that's been going on for some time, but the dollar's still holding its own against the BRIC Alliance. But that has caused our money to lose value, which has brought financial hardship on the average American. The average American is putting his food bills, McDonald's, whatever, they're putting it on credit cards because they don't have the cash to pay up front. They're paying over a period of years for a simple meal. And you want to, with the misinformation, that's going to be propaganda, putting out false information and getting people to be mad at the government, people to be mad at each other. I mean, we're more fractured and splintered in this country than we ever have been. I mean, we saw this happen during COVID. When COVID went down, people without a clear enemy to attack started attacking Chinese people in schools, Chinese shop owners, because of the COVID disease. Okay. What are we seeing happening now with this misinformation that's coming from the media? People are attacking people that's got Tesla cars. They're attacking Tesla places where people are selling their cars. These are innocent people that have nothing to do with the situation, but they're being shot at. They're having their cars being spray painted because there's no clear enemy, and the people are allowing their emotions to overcome their intelligence. So when they start doing that, and we're seeing that stage right now. With the third stage, if those 2 stages are done successfully when the attack occurs, and this terrorism thing would be part of stage 2, because they're not going to wear T-shirts that says I'm a terrorist. They're going to put on police uniforms, paramedic uniforms, governmental agency uniforms like FEMA. They'll have on uniforms like National Guard, and they will come out and they will attack people, and they will leave a few survivors. And when that occurs and people start hearing their story, well, the police have attacked us. The National Guard start shooting us, or the paramedics pulled up and started shooting at innocent people. Stage 3 is the collapse itself, because if stage 1 and 2 is done successfully, people will lose trust in the government. People will start fighting authority and order. And in the collapse, you're going to have both societal collapse, you're going to have economic collapse. And
Hmm.
we've already seen the first stage, them in preparation. We're in the second stage now. And third stage, we'll turn on each other left and right, because we've already seen cases where people have turned on each other for much less.
Right.
But I'm
Hmm.
gonna stop there right now, Steve, so you and Sanford can chime in.
So, um, so one of the things that I wanted to talk, as you alluded to, and you talked on it, as some of the suspects, if we will. So, like you said, just throwing it out there that we do have these foreign agents, these sleeper cells, that America has done a lot overseas, and many Americans
Yeah.
don't really understand America's foreign policy and how it has, and some might say that, some of what the attacks that we may see are unjust, and some may see them as just, because of America's foreign policy and destabilizing governments. But then there are, within the United States, there are also elements of dissatisfaction, and we can't really ever throw out the fact that you also have those who are white supremacists who want to start a race war. And that's one of the things that we saw with Dylan Roof, and these what they call lone wolf attacks, which there's really no such thing as a lone wolf attack, because many of these individuals are a part of groups on social media, whatever app that they might use. So this is something that we should also be aware of. So, one of the things, like you said, you know, they may want to paint these well, not stereotypes, but they may want you to look at somebody who's Arab, or somebody who is Asian, or somebody who's black. But in truth, in today's climate, it's best for you just to be alert, period. You know what I mean? And not have these type of stereotypic uh, uh, um, attitudes towards other people, because in truth, I think that most people who are living here, who are black, white, red, or yellow, all want the same thing, which is a government that works for the people. But I think, once again, too, that you have a lot of dissatisfaction coming from a lot of people who have been laid off. And I heard today even that, those who have student debt, that there may be, like they said, the number was ridiculous as far as how many defaults on student debts that will occur by the end of this year, and that once that starts to happen, that these people, their accounts will begin to be uh, debited, if you will, by the government against their will. They'll just be taken out. So I think that living conditions are causing a lot of stress on people's lives, so much so that people might begin to crack up, and we never know. So that's why I'm saying that as we go in the world, we need to definitely be aware of our surroundings, and looking out for what might, suspicious looking attitudes or behaviors. So, saying that, is there, something that we should look out for as far as going out and walking around in a crowded place?
Brother
And
Steve, the last few
yeah,
seconds, you got some serious like double feedback or something. I don't know what happened. Like in the last
oh,
30
okay, okay.
seconds.
I'll go ahead and try to correct that. I think I hear it too. So,
Um, you know, we got several categories of terrorists, though. So we got domestic terrorists, kind of what you guys, speaking about that, brother Steve, and Aaron's kind of talking about the international terrorists. So you got certain traits of all of them. I just want to say a couple things real quick about terrorism in general. So domestic terrorists, that's basically done for an ideology thing. They either want you to think like them or have a method of operation that they have the way they do certain things. So it may involve race, like you talked about, or anti-government. Those are the most popular traits for domestic terrorism. They deal with either race or anti-government, trying to persuade somebody to believe a certain way that things are supposed to be. Then we have international terrorists, which is what Aaron was talking about. So, the last 4 years, we've let over 14 million people in this country, and we don't know who they are or where they are. And I'm going to leave that number right there. But you got some common things that happen with that. And the purpose for that is an act of violence. One, they want to have an audience. That's something that has to be involved in it. And the creation of fear or a certain kind of mood. It's always going to involve innocent victims, and it's going to have some kind of political goal. And that's if we got somebody coming from other countries with terrorism. So those are the kind of common factors that you're going to find in the two sets of terrorism. When you talk about things we look out for, yeah, man, I mean, it goes from as simple as paying attention what somebody has on, how they moving, how many people in the room that seem to be moving together that we need to stay conscious of. When I mentioned the guy who was at the mall, or we're talking about like some of the domestic terrorists, they had some strange behavior when they go back and look at it, and nobody paid attention to it. Even the guy at the Batman thing, he positioned himself near the curtains, and people saw him and just assumed he was an employee. The guy who was at the mall who shot on people, he went in the bathroom and was in the bathroom for about 30 minutes or so. People knew it, and nobody said enough because it didn't seem strange enough to them. Last year at Joel Osteen's church, a lady walked in with her child, went into a cubbyhole, and came out and started shooting. Well, she walked. If you look at the video, she walked in really erratic, went to that cubbyhole, and she walked past the police. She walked past some of the quote unquote security within the church, and nobody paid attention to her odd behavior, the way how fast she was walking, and where she went to. So I think the first thing is just being aware, not only your surroundings, but just behavior of other people in your surroundings. Because most of the time people tell on themselves in a certain way. Aaron mentioned about the amount of people that may attack at once. We have a thing where, it may be people who are dressed like he said, first responders, and they the same way. So you have to watch out for that. Also, the collective group of first responders walk into a room and you not have seen anything that calls for an emergency. That might be something you look at. Yeah, just to pay attention to it.
And I'm and get you, brother Aaron. We got a little feedback coming from yours, so if it's possible when you are not talking to just mute it, or I can do it on this end, whichever one is best for you.
Okay. Now,
all right.
One of the things that they came up with as a possible solution, and this was the American Hospital Association, they want all level 1 trauma centers, they want them to review their security. Because, most contract security is not armed. And if they're armed, 9 times out of 10, they've gone through the police academy to be able to carry that gun on their hip. They want them to identify pre-attack reconnaissance. So they want people in the hospitals to be aware of their surroundings, to notice what's going on, to maintain situational awareness, and be able to tell if someone's walking through there carrying their phone in such a manner that They're doing actual reconnaissance of the place. And then they want them to be able to implement an emergency response measures now. And I can see them contacting the police so the police can get SWAT there as quickly as possible, because it's going to take SWAT to deal with this type of fighting. But I don't think the hospital employees themselves nor their contract security are in a position to be able to stop a group like that. Once you let them get inside, they're going to have you outgunned right off the
Mhm.
bat. So, man, you've got to actually be able to spot these people before they come inside. I mentioned to some friends that I know that work at the local hospital in our area, and I said, stay alert, because they're talking about terrorist attacks on the hospitals. Watch for strange looking people. And all of them said, strange looking people, we see that every day. We see suspicious looking people. We see strange looking people. How are we going to be able to pick them out? And that's going to be a challenging situation right there,
It is a
because
challenging situation.
they see everything from homeless people coming in there to professional people coming in there. But there's people coming in there that are schizophrenic. There's people coming in there that's got mental issues, uh, and they're acting in strange manners. So for me to tell them to be alert to strange people or strange actions, they're seeing it on such a level every day that it's hard for them to be alarmed by it, because this is a common occurrence for them. But I'll stop there for right now,
Absolutely.
Steve.
What?
So
Let me
I
say this
wanted
right
to,
quick.
go ahead.
My last few years as a cop, I actually was a police officer in a hospital. So I worked for a major group here when I served as a police officer in the hospital. One of the things that they had started doing in the big hospitals, they got rid of security. And to be in there, you had to be a certified peace officer. So that's one of the things they changed. Another thing they changed, my last maybe 2 years in there, they started having what they call Alice training, which was mandatory, which dealt with active shooters. That's something that they started doing in the last 2 years that I was at the hospital. So they've tried to implement some things. I think two of the things that you're talking about, Aaron, that does happen or that hasn't happened is this: when you're dealing with police or security in the hospital, what people don't realize, first thing, the public think because you're in the hospital, they're not police officers. They don't know they can put you in jail like anybody else. They just police
Mm.
officers sanctioned under the city at that hospital. So that's one thing the public needs to understand. The second thing is it's really more of an administrative thing than it is a security or police thing, because it's a public place and they don't want the public to have a certain mindset like they're coming into a prison or a jail or something. They actually have the police in the hospitals kind of back up and do their job with less intensity. So it'll be interesting to see how the administrations respond to this, because one of the frustrating things about being a police officer in a hospital is that your police capabilities get nullified due to public opinion, as opposed like when you're a cop on the street and you do what you have to do and you let the judge figure it out. So it's a little different. So yeah, it's going to be volatile. And I know they're trying to increase the amount of police in hospitals, but because of budgets, quote unquote budgets, they have a problem doing that. So I find that to be interesting too. So hopefully this will spark a different kind of initiative from administrations and hospitals, and let that protocol, you know, be intensified.
Mm. Yeah. So I
I'm
think,
also after that. Uh, the schools only have one guard, and they call him a community resource officer. It's usually an off-duty police officer or something. You got so many hundreds of children and only one officer. a team of guys can come in and overwhelm that person pretty easily and get control of the school during lunch hour or whatever. They've got everybody right there in the cafeteria or in the gymnasium, wherever they eat at, and you got your hostages there. At a sports event, basketball, high school games. I used to guard football games and basketball games. And on the inside, again, one guard for every 100 people there. There might be 3 or 4 of us there. That's it. And most of the time we had to work unarmed, except for maybe a collapsible baton and a can of pepper spray. And you've got hundreds of people there. That would be a soft target. Old folks' homes. I heard this happened a number of years ago where one guy with a knife walked into an old folks' home and just started stabbing people. Some of those people were bedridden, couldn't even get out of bed to run. And the ones that could move around, their knees were so bad they couldn't actually run. This guy could power walk right up on them and cut them down. And I remember they finally got him. But your only form of security at those places are the orderlies. And you don't have a bunch of them. And they're definitely unarmed. I mean, America is not ready for this type of fighting or this type of thing to occur. And that's the reason why it's going to be so easy for some of these people to do this. Now, we do have the CCWs. There's a lot of people out there that are carrying concealed, that if they go into the wrong bank or the wrong situation, they might run into 4 or 5 people in their arm, which could spoil their day or spoil their plans. But short of running into that, there's not much out there to stop uh, armed assaults, which is going to be one of the tactics. But I'll stop there, Steve.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I wanted to chime in on another issue that might come up too, and I think one of the things that we have to look at is America is becoming a real like let me mute your mic real quick there. Uh, so America, one of the sad issues is that we're seeing America heading towards like a police state. Some of these issues that we're talking about is eventually America is going to look somewhat similar to what we see in Israel and in some other countries where you have, armed individuals on the street. And I think that this is a sad situation that America is entering into, where we might see this type of civilization, if you want to even call it that, because it will, it's just a restriction not only of our freedom of speech, but now we're even going to be seeing a restriction of our ability to move around. And I think that this is something that, like I said, we can look at a lot of sleeper cells and foreign agents, but there's a lot of dissatisfaction. There's a lot of dissatisfaction that's taking place right here in this country. And we saw that dissatisfaction out of that young man who gunned down that health insurance executive. And then what we saw with the aftermath with the people coming out in support of, I think it was, I forget what the young man's name is, but I think that that is a sign in and of itself that the people are becoming so dissatisfied with the government that I think that we have to be very, very careful. Another thing that we have to look out for, and I'm going to throw this out there, is that we have to look out for what's called false flag attacks. Sometimes false flag attacks, which are what you would call attacks that are done by an agency or some type of entity so that it will bring about a certain action from either the government or from certain groups. And I think that that's something that we have to look out for as well. And so I think one of the things that when we're out, what we should definitely do is just look at somebody that may be out of place. Like I was saying with Dylan Roof, when he went into that black church, they should have been on. They should have. We should have when we're out, we should have ourselves at when we see a certain thing that doesn't look right. We should be on high alert. You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of us we just go out and we don't even, we're not even conscious of, our surroundings and people in our surroundings. So here's for instance, the jogger, not the jogger, but the marathon where the young men they were carrying a backpack, and you know why would they be having a backpack when people are out watching people jog? So just think things like that when you see people sit certain objects down in places and they walk away. I think all these type of things should be on people's minds, and they should be very aware of their surroundings. And really, I would be very careful and very aware in any type of large crowd situations as well. So I'll just throw that out there. Mhm.
Well, you're absolutely
But what do
right.
you?
I think one of
Mm,
the problems, though, that we're so accepting of everything that anytime you try to isolate somebody for what you see or what you think it is, they can say either you're attacking that group or particular people or something. So it's so easy to be called. Um, it's easy to be called a racist because you look at somebody because they look different. They may be a different ethnicity. It's easy to be called a sexist because somebody uh, may have a certain look that identifies as a certain in a certain section of human beings. And if you say something about it, well, you're gonna be called out for that. So I think part of that problem, Brother Muhammad, is this that we become so sensitive and so woke. See, I got a problem with the woke thing, but I'm gonna leave that on that statement. But we become so woke that sometimes we can't do the things that good sense would allow you to do too. So
mhm,
your vigilance that you're talking about is 100% needed. But how does the average layman identify something without offending somebody? So I think people are
mhm,
more worried about offending somebody and being targeted because they say you offended this particular person or this particular group or whatever it is, that it keeps you kind of not on your toes to say certain things. And we accept everything. I don't understand today how it's 85 degrees and we'll accept a young man or a young lady wearing a hoodie. But then
mhm,
they'll tell
mhm,
me that, well, that's just a style of culture. But I'm not supposed to have any kind of preconceived notion about somebody with 80 degrees out wearing a hoodie. No, man. And
mhm,
so we do a lot of things ourselves that keep us from being vigilant because we've been
mhm,
told we have to accept some things that are abnormal, that are obvious to me would be red flags. But if I
mhm,
point out
mhm,
a young man or a young woman wearing a hoodie and the day was 76 degrees, they gonna say I'm picking on them because of a certain group and that's how they dress or what they do. So there's a flip side to it where we kick ourselves in the rear end and stump our own toes. You know what I mean? And we got to
right.
get past that. I think we got to get past that period as a society and realize this is real because, like Aaron said earlier, when it happens, and it will happen when it happens on an international level, it's going to be more than one person, and most people aren't used to that. And, you're used to hearing about an isolated individual going to somewhere and doing something horrible. Well, if five people go into a school and do something, uh, and the way we care about our kids, we're not prepared. We're not going to be prepared. We don't want to mentally do. and physically do what's necessary because you're worried about what's going to happen with the children that have been taken. If it's elderly people like he spoke of, it's the same thing. We have that same lack of ability to do what's necessary because we worry about the environment. So, you know, the mindset, as you were saying earlier, Steve, the mindset has to change. And we have to be willing to do a couple of things. Most of the things, I've done a lot of studies when it comes to this. I've studied a lot of classes, taken a lot of classes. I actually teach some classes, and I think that's something we can offer through the Refuge Depot. That if their
Hmm.
organizations want us to come in and we talk about active shooter stuff, that we can actually go through that and teach that how to respond because that's something I teach. But we I think we have to make up our minds that you know this is real, and sometimes you have to step on people's toes in order to discover or do the right thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it's an easy way to approach it or easy way to handle it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I definitely. So what I, of course, worry about is the is the scapegoating, right? So this is what I'm fearful of is the scapegoating, as I think Aaron was talking about with the attack on the Asian Wuhan, or the Corona virus, and during 9/11, the attack on the Arabs, but in truth, like I was saying, everyone's suspected. For me, I'm not one who's just going to look at somebody because they're Arab and think they got some nefarious, intentions. They may have, but I'm also looking at this white individual, being as a black person, that there's been a number of different attacks to start some type of race war. So I think that I don't want to say that everyone is suspect. I'm going to say that everyone is not suspect. At the same time, I'll just say that we definitely have to be very vigilant and aware of our surroundings, and we also have to be aware of just the climate that we're living in. Uh, that we're living in right now. So I'll go ahead and
Well,
stop right there.
I'm gonna piggyback off what you were just saying, Steve. And in the area I live in, which I know both you guys do too, let's say that a terrorist attack occurred and it was done by ISIS-K, which would be Arab people in nature. I mean, there's people from India that's here. There's Mexicans that are here. I've seen some Pakistani people that are here, and they're of lighter complexion enough that they look Arab. And I would fear for their safety and the safety of their children behind those type of attacks. Because again, to create chaos and turn Americans against Americans is going to be the end goal. That's how
Mhm.
empires fall. They crumble from the inside first before an outside group can come in and take them over. But there's so many foreigners. I mean, that the average person with no clear enemy to attack is going to let their emotions overcome their intelligence, and they're going to go after anyone outside their color. And there will be those who will take advantage of that. Going back to your false flags, there's some of
Mhm.
the domestic groups of nefarious nature that would see this as an opportunity for them to attack and blame it on uh, the Arabs or whoever's doing the original terrorist attacks. And I think that they will step up and they will execute certain false flags and point their fingers at everybody but themselves. And a lot of people go for the okey doke and be like, it's got to be all of them. It's got to be all of them. And a lot of these people's shops and stores and drive-throughs and stuff would probably get ransacked, looted. They would be injured, and they're totally innocent people. They have nothing to do with the political climate that's going on. And I just feel bad for them because I know where this will end up and how many innocent people are going to get hurt in the process. But I'll stop there.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and address let's go ahead and address some of the things that we can do as individuals when we go out, and what we should do maybe if we do get caught up in some type of soft target attack. And I'll go ahead and start off. And so one of the things we definitely want to do is that when we walk out the door and we come into uh, places where there are crowds of people, that I think that one of the first things that we definitely want to do is we want to understand our exit points. We want to understand if something happens, how can I get out of this building, right? And sometimes we have to think outside the box as well. So an exit point, many might think, is the door that we went in, but there are other exit points, for instance, that the janitors use. They may come in and out, and they go down a hallway or whatever. So any type of exit point that we can get ourselves out, we should definitely try to do that. If there is an active shooter, for instance, one of the things that we definitely want to do is we want to get down low, and we want to get to like closer to a wall and just ease our way out if possible, because one of the things about shooters is that instinct, that hunter instinct, always rises up to where they're looking at shooting what's moving, a moving target that they see moving. So if you're running around, that they're going to try to target you. So the best thing to do is to just try to get down low, stay to a wall, and try to ease up on out of there. I think that another situation that you might have to look at is if they're close enough to you. Look, you may have to. You're gonna have to fight. You don't just lay. Sometimes we'll freeze up. And that's not the time to freeze. If you can find any type of object that's in your environment to use to save your life, or to disable the attacker, then whatever you can find. And for me, I'm gonna let you know that if it's anything like a rock or anything, I'm gonna use something to save my life. So I just wanted to throw that out there if you all want to chime in on that.
Yeah, I would say anytime I walk into a restaurant, by the time I sit down, I've already selected two angles of how I'm getting out of that place. And plus, when I sit down, I always sit where I can see the front door. I want to see what's coming in or what's developing in that direction. Uh, I always look to see where the exits are, and then I always know that there's an exit outside the kitchen. And I am not going out the same door I came in. You get bottlenecked there. You'll get trampled to death because instinctively everyone's running for that exit, and everybody ain't gonna fit out that doorway. And a shooter can just point his gun. He could be blind, and he can just fire into that crowd, and he's hitting somebody. But if you go through
Mhm.
that kitchen, and there's a back door on that kitchen where they take the trash out, you can ease right on out. Now, if you find yourself trapped, but there's loose chairs around, you take one of them chairs and you throw it through the nearest window, and you just created an opening. And you can egress your way on out through a broken window or something. But if you're forced to fight, everything becomes a weapon. The cups, the glasses, the plates, the chairs, everything that's
That's right.
in there. Um, so there's no way. But if you can get close to a wall, if there's a lot of fighting going on, put your back to the wall, then you can visibly see what's coming from your sides and what's coming from the front. But you've only got moments to react once you see something coming in at that front door. And while they're trying to get control of the room, you should already be going through an exit door at that point. Don't sit there and wait for the gunfire to start. If you see them coming in with weapons, you should already be moving. And whoever you're with should know that if you say move now, both of you are moving at the same time. I mean, I took my daughter to a Mexican restaurant in our area, and we sat down to a Taco Tuesday. And as we sat down, she had her baby with her. I said, now an active shooter just came in the front door. How you getting out of here? And she was not prepared for that lesson that I was going to teach her that day. And I explained, I said, leave the buggy. We ain't worrying about the buggy. You just grab the kid and I'll put my body between you and the shooters. But we're going through that kitchen door and we're going to go out the back door. We'll come back and get the buggy later. And she
Mm-hmm.
understood that. So I said, if I say move, you just grab the kid, leave the food, leave the buggy, just grab the kid and let's go. And she understood that you
Right.
got to move with that kind of quickness, because if you don't, you got a job that's going to be put up on you that you ain't going to want. It's going to be to play hostage. And when the police come
Mm-hmm.
in shooting, you get caught in the crossfire. You don't know whose bullets hit you. So if you don't want to play hostage, you better move quick when you see something developing. But I'll stop there.
Well, you got
Mm-hmm.
the old thing that teach to run, hide, and fight, which is kind of what Brother Steve was talking about. When I was I was a hostage negotiator for about 13 years, right? I also was a special response team commander too, so I was on both ends. So I taught a SWAT end and the hostage negotiation end. And one of the things we had the 4 R's we would tell people, which is realize this is real, this is happening to you. Then recognize the things you guys are talking about, the areas you might be able to get out, uh, the areas you might be able to move to, respond, and you go ahead and you actually respond. And then the final thing would be resist if you can't get free. So that falls into stuff both of you guys were talking about, which really goes into the run, hide, and fight. You run if you can get away. If you can't, you hide. And if it comes down to it, you have to fight. If you're going to get away first, that's the first thing you want to do. You always want to try to avoid it if you can. Make your exit as fast as you can, as both of you guys were saying. Stay vigilant, stay
Mm-hmm.
purpose driven. And this is why you have to think about these things ahead of time. So what Aaron did with his daughter was really an outstanding move, because in the good times when we're supposed to talk about bad things that could possibly happen. So yeah, that's how and even if you don't have that conversation over and over again, when something traumatic happens, you resort to your fundamental thing, and you may instantly go right back to, what Dad told me. Make sure I got my back to the door. Make sure I can see what's going on. Make sure I can have my back to the wall. Brother Steve said, make sure when I move a certain way, I don't move where I excite the person who's acting upon
Mm-hmm.
attacking everybody. So those conversations need to happen. One of the things I wanted to say too, Brother Steve, when you talked about, and I've always admired the brothers in the nation for this, their vigilance when it comes to public events, and how they keep a secure mindset. Um,
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that people have to be taught, though, even in places of sanctuary, in certain states, so it's against the law for even an organization that's operating as a safety team to call themselves security within a certain environment, because
Mm-hmm.
that leads to litigation later on, because you may do certain things and it comes out in a civil suit. Now, we know if something happens, we don't care what happens at that moment. I don't give a damn if you're suing me or not. I'm trying to get the hell out and get safe. But I'm just talking about, as far as the organizations, they need to realize certain key phrases. Instead of calling yourself security, call yourself a safety team.
Mm-hmm.
Develop a safety team, not a security
Good.
team. Because in the state of Ohio, there's certain criteria that have to be met for you to legally say you're security. That way, if you
Mm-hmm.
take somebody down collectively and they want to come back because of the ways the laws are structured, and they want to sue you because they broke an arm or a leg or something. Now, we all know initially we're not going to give a damn if they hurt or not, but the reality is we live in a place that the bad guys have rights too.
Right. Right.
Right.
And
So,
Brother Sanford, we'll have to do a program with you where you can explain what are your rights.
yeah.
How far can you go, and where, where do you have to stop? I just wanted to veggie back off of what you and Brother Aaron were saying. And so one of the things too is that like what Brother Aaron was saying, is the reason why you want to try to get down and to the side is just what he was saying. Sometimes the shooter doesn't kill as many people as people who are trampled to death, by the people who are trying to run and get away from the shooter. So that's something that you definitely want to realize and recognize. You want to, if you do have a child, you definitely want to pick them up and hold them close, because as the crowd gets to moving, that child could easily be just knocked out of your hands and shuffled on down with the crowd. So that's definitely something to think about as well. Another thing is, when you get to your destination, you definitely want to think about even your parking. You know, I like to come and back in anywhere that I go, and possibly maybe just do a little extra walking. So that
Mm.
because, like what Aaron was saying, and I think you said it also, brother, is that when you, at a certain point, it's going to be gridlock. And so what you want to do is you want to try to get yourself in a position to where you can get up out of there as quickly as possible. And if you got to back out and make sure you're not running over anybody and all of that, that's not going to be a good sign. So I just wanted to throw those two things in there as well.
And something he said,
Um,
if you're in an area that's populated, how Aaron talked about everybody running toward the door. Well, when all the action's toward the door, that's what the aggressors is concentrating on too. So knowing the
mhm,
alternative ways to get out of a room are very important, because where the most attention is where the person's probably going to center most of their attention to. You know what I mean? So
mhm,
if everybody's running to the
mhm,
door, most of my victims are at the door. Highly unlikely if it's one
mhm.
person, he's going to be concentrating on more than one area at a time. Now, if we have more than one attacker, then it's a whole different situation. Both of you mentioned great points. I want to say about everything's a weapon. Everything's a weapon. And I even saw a video where a person was attacked by a dog the other day. And, first thing I thought, you got a shirt, put that shirt around that dog's throat, take that belt off, put it around that
Mhm.
dog's neck. We don't think like that because it's not something that we thought about ahead of time. But everything's a
Mhm.
weapon. If it's a glass there, you break the glass. A glass now is an edged weapon.
Right.
That fork,
And
that
I
fork
just
is
wanted to,
go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say, like in situations like that, it's time to have the mentality that I'm going to make it out of here alive, even if you don't make it out alive. The mentality should be that I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it out of here alive, and not the mentality that I'm going to be a victim. And I know many might not think that they think that way, but when you when you freeze up, and you're not, your mind is not, okay, what can I do to survive? Instead of, like you said, I think, Aaron, you were saying, instead of being a hostage, and you may find yourself in that situation, but I'm saying that if you should do whatever you need to do to survive, and that's what it all boils down to. And I think one of the things that to survive is that, like you're saying, we should get some type of training if we can get just even if it's just minimal training on some type of martial arts. We should also learn some first aid training, just in case we get injured and we need to take care of a family member that might have gotten some type of injury or something like that. So I just wanted to say that. But Aaron, I know I have to. Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Another technique that I use, and I always keep it with me, is to keep a can of pepper spray in my pocket at all times. If I had to evacuate a room, I'm spraying this in the air behind me. And if someone's coming in trying to get control of a room to take hostages or whatever, with the hostages coughing their heads off and rushing to get outside to get some air, the attackers are going to be doing the same thing. it's going to be difficult to get control of a room when everybody's choking from this. And that gives me
Mm-hmm.
even a better chance of getting out that back door, that side door, or however way I'm going to try to get out of there. But as I'm running, I'm spraying right behind me. And I feel bad for those who's got asthma that could be in the room. But like you said, the instinct of survival will kick in, and I plan on going home at the end of the day.
Right.
So I'll stop
Right.
there.
For sure. So I think to wrap this up, let's talk about just happen. What should we maybe possibly do after a situation like that? So a situation like being any type of situation like that, I've been robbed before, and been in one situation it was a physical robbery where I had to physically fight. So things like that are can be traumatizing, and I think so in any situation like that, I think that individuals should not just, you know, um, go home, but maybe talk it out with family, talk it out with friends, talk it out with a professional and talk it through because things like that can haunt you definitely for a while until you're able to get over situations like that. So I would definitely say get you um, some mental therapy for something like that. Would you all like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would strongly suggest everyone get your CCW. Don't take that for granted. Second Amendment allows you to do that, exercise that Second Amendment. Get your CCW, and then buy yourself some self defense tools, pepper spray, a good pocket knife. There's many self defense devices out there that you can put on your keychain or whatever. There's some places you go into will have a sign up where you're not allowed to bring your gun in there. But those self defense tools will help you get from that door to your car, and it would give you something because everyone's not going to go out and take a martial arts class. And it takes years of
Mhm.
practice to get good at that. If you want to shortcut it, you can take a self defense class, and you'll find
Mhm.
more people, especially women, that will sign up for self defense classes. But again, if they're not physically stronger than the man they're going up against, it's I would say having some knowledge is better than nothing. But if you've got that knowledge and then you got some self defense tools or you got your CCW and you trained with it, the more training you have, the more instinctive it becomes. Muscle memory comes into place and you will automatically do something. If you practice it long enough, you'll do it without thinking about it, and you can catch that person off guard that you're trained and ready to respond to said threat versus them thinking that you're going to cower down or you're going to freeze in place or you might try to run, and they're right there on top of you. I mean, my knees are so bad, I can't run. So I'm going to have to make a stand and then
Yeah.
try to get away after I can create that
Yeah.
distance between me and that person. But I got to injure them enough to where I have a shot to get away. So I
Mhm.
strongly suggest getting a CCW. I strongly suggest getting some training outside of that CCW. I strongly suggest getting some self defense products and do a threat assessment when you get ready to leave your house. Where you going that day? Determine what possible
Yeah.
threats you can run into, and then use that to decide what you're going to put in your pocket, your purse, or what you're going to have on you at that point. But I'll stop there.
Yeah. That's a,
Well,
that
I want
that's
to say
real
first
good
of all,
advice right there.
I want to say
Go
first of
ahead,
all,
bro.
the one thing I teach a lot of self defense stuff, and I've done some stuff with Aaron where we do self defense classes. But the one thing and I might mention this before, the one thing you can't teach is aggression. So first of all, we dealing with what you said, Steve, about the mental capacity to deal with what happened, a traumatizing event. Yeah, I think you should talk to somebody. I think you should seek some kind of help. I don't care if it's religious. I don't care if it's like you said, a close friend. I don't care what it is, because everybody can't handle the trauma the same. But you have to
Mhm.
get your mind has to be there first. You know, typically, if somebody's coming to harm you, they have already made up their mind. They're willing not to be around anymore.
Mm.
Means they're willing to die for their cause. You have to keep that in mind, because when people do inhumane acts, that means they're not rationalized like a human being. So you really have to have your mindset in a place that you're going to do anything and everything so you do win, or so you do survive and get away. And that's hard for people to wrap their heads around, because you know when it's over, that's final. And most people, I don't care what you say, most people don't get to that point. So you have to think about those kind of things first. The next thing I want to say, and we didn't touch on this too much. I think Steve, you may have mentioned it earlier. I don't know if you or Aaron, but don't get caught up in this social media thing too tough either. Because when we talked
Mm.
about groups, or how somebody might do something with the intent of making another group of people, or set of people look a certain way to kick it off. Well, we get so caught up in this social media thing, and we'll start believing
Mhm.
that all Muslims are terrorists. We'll start believing that
Mhm. Mhm.
everybody that's black is going to rob you. We'll start believing that everybody white is a racist. We'll start believing we'll buy
Mhm.
into that crap, because we have been programmed. Pay attention to who's programming your programmer. My good friend Rick Poole says that. Who's programming your programmer, boy?
Mhm.
So if you start looking at social media and take everything they post as word, then you can be misled. You can mislead yourself. So
Mhm.
I believe all the things you guys are saying are 100% true. But they say the mind is a terrible thing to waste. So you think, so you shall be. So you really need to think about these things and kind of realize that they're real. So when you see an event happen in another state or another country, ask yourself, man, what I think that person's head had to be to do that, and how
Mhm.
willing they were to carry out that act. And if that happened and I took my child to a basketball game, what would I be willing to do to make sure me and my child survive? Make sure that me and my
Mhm.
spouse survive. I mean, you got to have those thoughts ahead of time. And I don't want everybody to be
Mhm.
paranoid, but I want to be paranoid enough enough to know that it can happen. And if it happens, think about, what would I do, or what am I willing to do? I love the idea that Aaron has about spraying the whole room. You don't hear many people say that, but you know what? That's right. Spray the whole entire room. It's gonna hurt you, them, and everybody else. But ain't nobody going out unscathed. I don't give a damn. We gonna
Right.
cause havoc all the way around. So the one thing, but I'm gonna stop by saying this. You know, pay attention. Pay attention. If something feels wrong to you, God gave you that sense, that gut for something. If something feels wrong to you, either leave the environment or let somebody else know in that environment who has some kind of say so that there's something that doesn't seem right to you. Don't just let it happen. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do it to yourself.
Right.
And have your mind made up. Go ahead there.
Another thing that I've done, and I've done it with my daughter, and I get mad at her because she likes going to the store by herself. And I've always taught her two is one, one is none. Two people can work together to overcome a threat where one person, especially if they got a baby in their arm, is unable to adequately defend against one or more attackers. So I may not go in the store with her, but I'm sitting out there in the parking lot and I'm watching the door where she's coming out at. I know where she's going to come out at. And I'm watching what's going on in the parking lot. I can see if the situation starts to develop or if somebody starts lurking by the door when she starts to come out. She'll send me a text and I pull right up to the door. And if someone's going to attack her, they're going to have me coming at them from behind. A lot of the women, they prefer to go shopping by themselves or something like that. If you group up, you're harder to be taken on by an adversary than if you're by yourself. And people need to realize that we're living in different times now. Bad things do happen to good people. So you need to take on different strategies and analyze again. You do the threat assessment. What kind of threat can I run into? They could be waiting for me at the door when I first come out the door, or they could attack me when I get to my car. But if there's somebody sitting out there in the car waiting on me, that kind of cuts down on the odds of their success. So, as Sanford has always said, it's not illegal to think. So people need to start thinking their ways around, but you can see a situation develop and you can come up with strategies to deal with. And I'll stop there.
Mhm. All right. Well, I guess we'll let you close this on out, Brother Sanford. We'll let you close this on out.
Okay. I want to say, first of all, I hope people take advantage of what we're doing here, because this is actually a very informative and a really good thing we're doing here with the Refuge Depot, and giving you
Mhm.
um, a sense of awareness about where we are as people in society in the world today. So I hope people take advantage of it and share it, and get to the Patreon and all the other outlets we got, and check us out on the Instagram and TikTok, wherever Brother Muhammad has us, and show some support and share it. I ask of everybody though, be honest with yourself.
Mhm.
Be honest with yourself and ask yourself, am I prepared or am I willing to do what's necessary to survive? Be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself and say, hey, I need to take some time out and get some training. I need to take some time out and understand what it means to be aware. You can find groups. I mean, there are a lot of organizations. You can type in Alice training, and there's some organizations that would teach you about, active shooter. There's some organizations in the state of Ohio that do the run, hide, and fight training, and it's free. You can just type in, where can I get run, hide, and fight training? And you get to be a group of people, and you can do that. You can bring people, organizations to your church, to your social events. You can contact us, and we can put something together. We can come see you and give you some information that would enlighten the people in your circle and the environment. So be vigilant, care about yourself, care about your environment. Don't get caught up in social media so much that everything you just look at, you take it for word. Do your own research, and try not to be in denial about what you're seeing and what you're hearing, because it's real, and the storm is coming. And learn to accept it. Keep your faith strong. Be physically fit. And remember, the mind's a terrible thing to waste. So you think, so you shall be. I'll stop right there.
All right.